This is my community resource audit presentation. I did my audit report on the homeless population. The reason I picked this population is because as a teacher, especially a teacher in a low poverty school, I tend to see a lot of students that are homeless, either themselves or their entire family don't have a place to live. Also, I notice as I'm driving home a lot, the people on the side of the road, it seems to be increasing, that continuously say homeless, will work for food. And so it was just something that interested me, and I thought I would like some more information on. Being homeless in the United States has been increasing or staying very similar to the same numbers since the 1980s. Before that, it seemed to be the homeless were only affected by economic conditions. But after that, there seemed to be more homeless that were not having housing because of not only poverty or not being able to afford the homes, but also divorce, natural disasters, veterans, and a growing number of people that have mental illness or substance abuse. These aren't the only factors that can contribute to homelessness, but it seemed like they increased greatly after the 1980s. Some of the demographics that I found were for the current year, 2016, and currently they say that 564,708 people in the United States are homeless. And of that number, around 206,000 are people in families. 358,000 were individuals. And the sad number there was that 25% of the group were actually children. Some of the other statistics were that about 15% of the homeless population are considered chronically homeless, which means that they have been homeless for a long period of time. And another number that was rather alarming was that 550,000 young adults under the age of 24 had an experience of homelessness for longer than 1 week. I did two different sections of studies about the information, behavior, and needs of the homeless. One part of the studies focused on the best way to communicate with the homeless and to get the information that they need about the resources available to them. One of the studies found that a large amount of the homeless reported eating at meal facilities 4 or more times per week. And of those people, there were a large percentage that had a mobile phone. So one of the studies suggested that the best way to communicate with them the information that they need were either via verbal announcements at these facilities or by texting them the information via the mobile phone. And one of the problems with this would be, of course, the fact that so many homeless tend to go through phones very quickly, and keeping up with a good number or a right number to get this information to them would be difficult. They did have some studies that showed that most of the homeless, over half, were able to access the internet at least once a day. Of course, a lot of these homeless use the library facilities that are available to them to get this information. And the finding in a lot of these studies were that most of the homeless were interested in an app or a website that would get this information directly to them that they needed it. One of the studies I did think was very interesting, though, was that when they interviewed several of the homeless, they found that they did not prefer using the internet to obtain information on these resources, and that they actually preferred face-to-face contact to get the information to them, which would be their shelter staff, their social services staff, or even the clergy, because they looked upon these people as friends who were trying to help them, and the internet and phone was a little less personal. The next section of studies that I researched were on the children in homeless situations. There were some studies that focused on children that were alone and were not in this situation with their family. Those studies focused on the best way to get the information to them so that they could access all the different agencies. And most of the agencies have the pamphlets or the people for them to talk to. And a big concern with that was that there were so many different agencies that the youth had to go from one agency to the next to access all of the services. I also found several studies that dealt with children who are still with their families, and the majority of those focused on their education and how they are trying to provide a good education to the students when they don't have a home to go to after school. Of course, this type of situation leads to a greater number of children that suffer from depression, anxiety, aggression. There are larger numbers of suicides in children that are homeless. The studies also showed that the students that had homelessness were found to have higher rates of repeating a grade, and their test scores and grades were lower than the average student. There was an abundance of resources available on the internet for the homeless. Of course, that does anticipate that the homeless are able to access the internet, but as some of these studies have showed, the majority of them do have access to computers. And again, hopefully they are taking advantage of the library services to get some of these resources also. The best one that I found for Kentucky, more specifically Louisville, was a website called Coalition for the Homeless. And it led to 29 different shelters, agencies, or advocacy groups in the area. So pretty much any type of service that a homeless person needs, this Coalition for the Homeless has a way to get them in touch with these types of services. Some of the examples were Choices Incorporated, which not only provides housing, but also has case managers that would work with the homeless families or even homeless single women. And they teach them life skills. They help them get back in the workforce, or if they have some type of mental or physical disability, they help them to become self-sufficient and find permanent residence of their own. There's also the Phoenix Health Center of Family Health Centers, and this provides healthcare services to people regardless of whether they have insurance or they have the money to pay. And this center have several locations around Louisville, and their website was very helpful in that it provides TARC bus routes so that they can easily figure out which location is the nearest to them and the best way to get there, and they would provide health services if they are needed. And then there was the YMCA Safe Place Services. This one, of course, is used by youth, children, that have a crisis and they immediately need a place to stay or someone to talk to. And you can see these safe place signs around a lot of local restaurants or stores or areas that the youth seem to frequent, and then they know that they can go to someone in the safe place and they will immediately call a number and get someone out there to talk to them. The one needs assessment that I saw that could possibly be done, again, I focused mostly on the homeless children because that seems to be where I identify with a lot since I see some of this in my school, is I think that a study could be conducted of the actual homeless students and what could be done to help them succeed in their education. What do they need after school resources, or do they need resources at their shelter or the place that they're staying? Do they need to have resources given to them during the weekends. And then once that we've gotten them in through their education in high school, how do we get them into higher education? What is available for them as far as scholarships or ways to pay for college, since obviously they're not going to qualify for a loan or that type of money to get into a good college? Or how do we get them into a job study program or an apprenticeship to get them into the workforce and hopefully out of the situation that they're in? I think the study would be done possibly in our schools. They would have the most opportunity to reach these students there. The situations that the teachers or the administrators know of, they could put them in touch with someone to talk to them. Of course, that would anticipate that we know that a student is homeless, so there would be a lot that we might possibly miss. But I think that would be a great study that could be done to hopefully help some of the children get out of this situation and not continue this path as they go into adulthood.